I think it can get overshadowed just how awesome a prospect DeAndre Ayton was because of how stacked the 2018 draft has ended up being. And because, through no fault of his own, he was drafted ahead of some, truly generational talents. But Ayton was a special prospect in his own right, a very unique brand of big man that is so well suited for the modern NBA. And it's funny that top five had two of the best big man movers ever that I've seen, and he and Jaren, who I made a video on previously. But Ayton's obvious physical frame was touted a lot. He's just Herculean in size and strength, but he is so nimble and just one of the best movers at that size I've ever seen. And while he played a lot of this big man drop coverage hedge stuff where he's able to get out and recover, he did a lot of pseudo wing defense where his mobility and size allowed him to do things and to play roles and to cover options that most bigs just can't. Where you see he's able to kind of cover this handoff and get over the screen and cut this drive off, where this is a simple looking movement, but most players 6'11 plus, 250 plus cannot do this, cannot move like this especially, and stay in front and cut off drives like that. And Ayton's versatility allowed him to do that and excel in that role. And Ayton, again, was able to close out hard to shooters without risk of getting totally torched because of how quick his feet were, and was able to easily slide with wings. And there's just absolutely no moving that guy. You have to get by him and get around him. Because if Ayton is at all connected to you, as he opens his hips and slides clean here, you are not pushing him backwards. That guy is enormous and a mammoth of a defender. And I think this Oregon game exemplifies a lot of this, while also kind of exemplifying some of his weaknesses. So I think it's going to be a cool point to go through his defense from this game. Ayton did so much wing defense stuff, like I said, he was helping at the nail here, which is just this area of the court where he's tagging this roll and recovering back to the shooter, able to close out hard without fear of getting torched again, because he has the foot speed and the hips and the change of direction to get back into the play if need be. He was executing pretty difficult off-ball actions like this, where he's forced to scram to a low man here. This is just not an easy thing to recognize. There's a lot of bigs, including Ayton sometimes, just float and generally don't know what to do in situations like these, but he has the mobility to make it back to plays like this on time, and again, is on time to help and end up helping corral this steal. Just watch the change of direction here, where Ayton plants that right foot and is immediately able to shift from going east-west to going north-south, switching from recovering from the hedge to covering the drive. This is impressive fluidity for a guy that size, and he's able to get right in front. Obviously, Ayton doesn't really contest, and that was an issue for him that we're going to get into more, but the sheer ability to change directions, to move around the court in all ways for a guy of that size outside of the paint was really rare. And it's something that I think is super valuable. And as we've seen, betting on large dudes with crazy mobility is generally a formula for upside, as I've talked about on this channel. And he hasn't done as much of the wing D stuff. He has parlayed that great movement into some real switch defense, where he's notably one of the league's better Giannis stoppers, and against prolific on-ball wing creators like Pascal, he's able to stop on a dime and contest shots pretty well. Watch him plant this back foot to help him not only stay on balance, but stop immediately and get a hand right at that ball to make a contest. It's beautiful stuff and just so impressive for a guy that large. And even when Ayton was really impressive with his mobility, you see him recover and swivel his hips quickly to change directions, his positioning did get him into trouble, where he's just too high here and doesn't have the vertical explosiveness to recover and block that shot. And again, in pick and roll situations like this, he often would just kind of loaf in space, where he is aimlessly just stunting up without a thought of, where his teammate is or who is behind him, and he's not in position to help. And this stuff I remember being really criticized at the time, but I think this kind of positioning stuff, while certainly it's hard to become elite at it if you're not already, when someone's that special of a mover, it definitely can be improved. And in the league, especially this year, Ayton has really improved there as well. Able to sit down and drop, covering both the guard and the rolling big man with his length and his mobility without overreaching, without getting out of position. And of course that, signature unbelievable mobility for a guy of his size, containing this Conley drive and forcing an errant pass. It's really, really impressive stuff. And even when Ayton isn't perfect on his positioning, where he's able to slide and cut off this Ingles drive beautifully again, just watch those hips move. It is unbelievable to see a guy that size with hips that fluid. Even when his positioning isn't perfect, he isn't in perfect spot to stop this Donovan Mitchell drive, just his sheer presence forces ball handlers off of their rhythm, and funnels them in to help defenders, which creates tougher shots. So even though Ayton isn't perfect, that mobility and the size really pays dividends for him. But I think the biggest issue as we kind of go to this play again was just the lack of rim protection. He's such a weird big defender where he was so elite in terms of his mobility and his kind of wing D traits and his fluidity and his rebounding. He swallowed up boards, but he just wasn't a guy who was really active defending the rim, where he often just wouldn't make contests in situations where you definitely think he would, or he wouldn't make a rotation. This is definitely a rotation that he should try, but Ayton again is just kind of loafing around here, waiting for a rebound potentially. And even when he did go for blocks, he was pretty jumpy and often out of position. But again, it didn't end up mattering so much, as Ayton is still returned top 40, 50 value in the league, only in his fourth year. Just got his new deal. And is a guy who I could definitely see continuing to improve on the defensive end because of how amazingly valuable his movement skills are, of how valuable it is to have a big who you can park in the interior and impact plays with his sheer size, because he has improved a lot on his awareness and his general rim protection skills, and someone who can really guard perimeter actions as well. So I think Ayton was just a phenomenally fun prospect. This is kind of unrelated to the topic of this video, but he was definitely a more impressive passer than I remembered, because I didn't really this was the last draft I didn't really scout, where he was able to find defenders cutting to him. This little Bill Walton-esque jump hook pass over this double team right in front of this help defender, beautifully recognizing that the sinking low man is behind his teammate, so he can slip that pass in for an easy shot. And he was comfortable enough, noticing where the double came from. Double comes from the backside, two defenders sink low, and the skip pass is open. He was comfortable doing this stuff, which is nothing crazy special, but he was able to do it and execute it. And again, in his fourth year in the league, the passing continues to improve. So Ayton was an awesome prospect, a very unique brand of big man, and someone who I'm just generally excited to watch continue to develop and continue to improve in the NBA.